Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Mics, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com. You can find cool stuff in stock every day, and our co-sponsor CardHoarder.com, offering the best inventory prices and delivery of cards for Magic Online. And finally, check out our new altar sleeves. Get your custom sleeve image of the Magic Mics crew at altarsleeves.com/magicmics. Yeah. And I am Evan Irwin, and we get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Aaron Campbell.
Hello, the little nya at the end just sold it for me. Like, if I wasn't sure about getting an altar sleeves, I'm in.
The nya did it? Yeah.
Good. Ruben Bressler.
My time has come. Insert Oogway meme here. My time has come. It's Mono Red Humans Week. I'm so excited.
Which is funny because you're sitting this one out mostly.
Yeah, so
Well,
you want to have a fast clock when you're Mono Red Humans, and we do this week.
you were very thematic in that regard, let's face it. We also begin with our choice of the top comment from last week in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Ruben will tell us who is the most eloquent, letting us know what card we did not choose as one of our top 10 Kaldheim cards. Ruben?
Well, Nomadic, you know the way to my heart, and the way to my heart is aggressive 2-drops. Nomadic writes, the card that you missed that I'm most excited for was Magda, Brazen Outlaw. The fact that WotC decided to give us dwarf tribal support, but also not necessarily 100% beholden to be in a dwarf tribal deck, makes me happy. It's such a good way to help the commander crowd that wants tribal support for these smaller tribes without swaths of creatures to back them up.
Yeah, Magda Brazen Outlaw has been really sweet, and from what I can tell, people seem to like it a lot. Again, it was on the Game Nights episode recently, which was fun too.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, it's a red and a generic mana for a 2/1 rare legendary dwarf berserker. Other dwarves you control get +1/+0. Whenever a dwarf you control becomes tapped, you create a treasure token, and you can sacrifice 5 treasures to search your library for an artifact or dragon card. Put that card onto the battlefield and shuffle your library. That's free.
Yeah.
That's
for
Blightsteel
free.
Colossus. That's Platinum Angel. That's whatever you want to do.
Darksteel Forge. That's Bogarden Hellkite. That's all the things you want. Magda's super cool. It's a 2-drop that supports your other dwarves. It also lets you do essentially a treasure deck.
Right.
You can have these big, giant dragons and artifacts, or you can do a combination thereof, and it fuels itself a little bit with that second ability. Very cool card.
I can't hear the name Magda without thinking of the housekeeper from Sex and the City, who also played a judge frequently on Law and Order, which I've also been watching a lot of lately. So my streams are just crossing all over the board, like Magic, TV shows.
I see. Well, congratulations.
Great. I love this card. This card's spectacular.
It's a sweet card. Congratulations to Nomadic. Please contact Erin on social media before she blocks you on all of them.
Yeah.
Thanks again to CoolStuffInc.com.
Supposed to get back to that person.
It's true. Who knew? Thanks again to CoolStuffInc.com for sponsoring this giveaway, and stay tuned for our top 10 list this week, and maybe you can win next week's free gift certificate. Because it is time to talk about our top 10 mono red humans as the wheel turns clink over to red cards. Yeah. And it's going to be a nice quick one, as red tends to be.
I have cast every single one of these creatures except for one. But I've cast a creature similar to my number 7. Which, by the way, my 10, 9, and 8 are all higher. So 10, my 7 9, will be the first card that I talk about. Yes. Wow. My 10, 9, 8, 4, and 3 are all higher this week.
Well, I came prepared. I've got a red shirt. I'm ready to rock.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's kick us off here, Aaron. What is your number 10?
So I'm not going to waste your time by telling you about how good this card is or the tournament accolades or anything like that, because you know why this card is on my list. It's just the beef. My number 10 is Enthralling Victor.
Oh, I knew it was coming.
So Enthralling Victor, I'm not made of wood, people. I'm not made of wood. So Enthralling Victor...
Yeah, I'm looking at this card.
Hey-o.
Sorry.
So Enthralling Victor is 3 colorless and a red. It was originally printed in Magic Origins, I believe. Creature type human warrior, 3 power and 2 toughness. When Enthralling Victor enters the battlefield, gain control of target creature and opponent controls with power 2 or less until end of turn. Untap that creature, it gains haste until end of turn. I have power 2 or less. You gain control of me.
Yeah. Look at that! Look at those V's.
Shout out to Winona Nelson.
Hip V's.
It's missing the tap step on my face.
Right.
Ability.
That 8-pack, the pecs.
on that
The
stomach.
hard-
I would
the
dry
hard
my
nips?
laundry on that stomach. Yeah. So we're just here for the beef.
This
Shout out to Winona
goblin in the
Nelson.
lower right is my reaction when looking at
That
this
goblin is
guy.
all of us. So shout out to Winona Nelson for giving the people what they want. And this card is beautiful, and I'm completely here for it.
It is.
The hair too.
And
That
the
hair is
just the
that's
sun coming off of it.
glistening in the sun. Oh,
Flavor text. Yeah.
Well, my number 10 is definitely, there's no tournament accolades here. This is mainly nostalgia. It's my list. I can do what I want with it.
Sure.
This is one of my favorite mono red humans. When I learned how to play Magic, when I first started playing Magic, hanging out in summer school and going to my friend's house and seeing his collection and stuff, I thought this was the coolest looking creature from Magic. I had a ton of fun playing it, and it made me so sad it was never that good. But I love, love, love Aaron the Relentless. Aaron the Relentless is from Homelands. Yes, I bought packs of Homelands for real back in the day. For 2 red and 3 generic mana, it is a 5/2 legendary human rogue these days. Back in the day, it was just summon legend. It has haste and 3 red : regenerate it. We don't even regenerate things anymore.
Regenerate on red, and this is Chris Rush. I mean,
Yes.
I remember being a kid and this art always just sticking out to me, and me wanting to know more about this character of where did he get that scar from? Why does he regenerate? Keeping up with him in the flavor text, he appears to have a feud with Hoven or Chandler, who are other characters from the Homeland storyline. And just this card looks at you. Like this is the kind of art that like follows you when you leave the room. And it's just a beautiful card.
Isn't the story something like they chopped him up into pieces and like he keeps putting himself back together and that's where all the scars come
like
from?
Yeah,
like it's crazy.
It's great. This card had its moment in the sun. Several like a decade later during Time Spiral Block. This card was a card in the mono red deck in Time Spiral Block constructed.
Nice.
Still not great. But yeah, this art with the close up on the face, we see it very rarely. We see it with the promo Thalia. There's a red-white legend that deals with artifacts. I think it has Metalcraft that has a real close-up on a face, but we really rarely see this style of effect. And you're right, it's an indelible image in Magic history, even though the card is not great.
Yeah, but man, I loved it. I thought this creature was the coolest thing ever back in the day. Let's move here to number 9. Aaron, what you got?
So I learned very recently that card draw in mono red in Commander is very weird. You don't have that many great options to choose from, particularly if you're like me and don't like to have a really high mana curve. So when I was going through the options on the earlier end of things, like the 1-drop, 2-drop, you have like your Faithless Lootings, your Tormenting Voices, your Thrill of Possibility, where you have to discard to draw, or some sort of looting effect has to happen. And then once you get to like 3, 4, and above, you start heading into like the territory they've been playing with where you can like exile. So you get like Light Up the Stage, you get Ignite the Future, cards like that. But it's very rare that there's just draw. Just draw. And so you find yourself looking in really odd corners to satisfy that niche, particularly if you're in mono red. And this was a card that I was surprised that people recommended, and it kept coming up again and again. And I'm officially a fan now. And so my number 9 is Humble Defector.
Yeah.
Humble Defector is 1 in a red. It was originally printed in Fate Reforged. It is a human rogue with 2 power and 1 toughness. You tap it and draw 2 cards. Target opponent gains control of Humble Defector, and you can activate this ability only during your turn. So because you're playing red, you can also just kill it when you're done. So like if you really don't want somebody to get it, you can just, it doesn't take much to kill it. Or if you are feeling political, you can just be like, hey, here you go. Like, remember this, don't kill me. So, if you do want to add a nice political element to the game, you can. It's also a body. If you're really hard up for attackers, you can probably get in there in the late game. You can also just kill it. There's a lot of things you can do with this. And when you're playing mono red, you really, beggars can't be choosers.
This also had a moment in the sun as a part of a twin Exarch deck.
Oh, yeah?
In Modern, because when you twin this, or when you Kiki-Jiki this, or when you twin it, either one, and you make the token taps, you draw 2, and you give a tapped one to your opponent, and then it dies at the end of the turn. So it's just a draw engine.
Oh, geez.
It's great.
It
didn't do wonderful, but Makihito Mihara played it in the God series a while ago.
Okay. That's funny. But this is very, very rare. They don't often just let red draw cards at all. Yeah. And the fact that it's the way that it's worded with tap : which means you put that on the stack, you sacrifice this guy, still get the cards out of it, which is awesome. And card is dope. Let's move here to my number 9. This is one of those cards that they just don't make them like this anymore. And I understand why Wizards doesn't kind of like this effect to essentially exist, not just even in limited formats, but even really in standard formats. They've taken out this ability entirely, which which used to even be in a different color entirely, but now they've moved it to where it kind of should be. Back in the day, there was the Tims of the world. Now there was the prodigal pyromancers or whatever the world. Right. But this one was the best one of those, in my opinion, as Cunning Spark Mage. Oh, Cunning Spark Mage, along with a Basilisk Collar, was the real deal back in the day.
I do that now with Pashulik Mons. Just
there you go.
Goblin Sharpshooter.
Yeah, for red and 2 generic mana, it is a 0/1 uncommon human shaman. It has haste, and tap it deals 1 damage to target creature or player, or tap to deal 1 damage to any target these days.
Yeah.
And this card is fantastic, and they just don't like putting pingers into sets at all.
It's arguable whether this or Fire Slinger is the best pinger, red pinger of all time. This saw a ton of play in Naya and various birthing pod decks during its time in Standard. Just a really, and Modern for that matter. It's a really excellent card.
Yeah, card is sweet. And it's just one of those cards that I really enjoyed from Worldwake, and they just don't make them like that anymore. Move on here to well, actually, I don't have a number 8. Mine's higher. Ruben's is higher. Aaron, do you have a number 8?
So my number 8, I admit, I thought it was a joke. Like, I thought it was a silly card. I didn't think it was really going to do anything. It was cute. I enjoyed what it was trying to do. I had no idea it was going to become like a Standard powerhouse, and actually did a lot of time, a lot of work when it wasn't Standard, and still goes for, okay, that was the promo. I'm sorry. I was going to say it's a $2 card. That's the promo, but still a lot of fond memories of this card. My number 8 is Carrie Zev Skyship Raider.
This was my number 9. I'm right there.
There we go. So Carrie's 1 colorless and a red. She's a legendary creature, human pirate with 1 power and 3 toughness. Why? First strike and menace. Why? Whenever Carrie Zev attacks, create a legendary 2/1 red monkey creature token named Ragavan that's tapped and attacking, and then you exile that token at end of combat. I remember the first time I saw this, I was like, it's silly and it's fun. There's no way this is going to see play. I died to that monkey and to her.
Yeah. This card's insane.
Many times. Yeah.
Card's so good. It's 2 mana, 3 toughness, and attacks for 3, essentially. And it has first strike and menace, so it's very tough to block and trade with efficiently. All for the low cost of 2. This thing was a staple in Rakdos aggro, in red deck wins. I mean, this thing, the vehicle decks were great with this. It won it won Worlds in the hands of Javier Dominguez in 2018. This card's insane.
It makes a legendary monkey. Like, how
too.
can you not love it?
And also was really a really neat character in the storyline. I said before, I would completely watch a buddy comedy that's like her and DePaula just like traveling around the multiverse and having adventures together. Yeah,
Wyatt Darby also won Pro Tour Dominaria with this card. Oh, by the way. This card's absolutely spectacular.
Fantastic. So we want to hear to our number 7. Ruben, what's your number 7?
Oh my God, I finally have an entry into the list. Hey. Hi, everybody. In the history of Magic the Gathering, they have banned many cards. Okay. They have restricted many cards. They have only banned and or restricted 1 mono red human, and it was one of the first cards ever banned or restricted. My first entry on the list, and the only entry on my list I have never actually cast myself. Ali from Cairo. 2 colorless red gets you an 0/1 human. Just a human. Damage that would reduce your life total to less than 1 reduces it to 1 instead. They did, of course, give you Fortune Thief in Time Spiral, which harkened back to Ali from Cairo and sort of became like a combat trick. You could attack and then flip up your Fortune Thief and go to 1. But Ali from Cairo itself, just the low cost of $396 from your Arabian Nights copy,
and that's as of this recording, by the way.
As of this recording, 0.03 ticks on Magic Online from Masters Edition 4.
Yes. You know, this card makes me think of the people that were upset about The Walking Dead, and they were like, it's taking us out of the fantasy, but this has an actual place in it. Cairo is in Egypt, so where's the outrage?
I mean, this was the fast and loose days. This is where they made the calls of the bannings and stuff, putting Kurt Ape on the reserved or restricted or whatever list. Like, it was crazy. It was silly. And they had convinced themselves that certain effects were so powerful, and they weren't, and they didn't know what they didn't know, and it was kind of silly back then.
This one was unbanned or unrestricted very quickly thereafter.
Yeah, it hurts me to know that I have multiples
the only creature
lifetime
on the banned or restricted list until they restricted Juggernaut in old Type 1.
No one liked this card back in the day. Everyone thought this card was trash. You could get it for nothing. People had it in their trade binders for whatever.
But it is noteworthy, the only red human ever banned or restricted in any format.
This is true. Aaron, what's number 7?
So in my experience, red creatures want to be cast. You very rarely, at least in my experience, slow roll your red creatures where they're either meant to be aggressive or they have haste or whatever. And this is a card that you can play it on turn 1, but it's actually kind of better if you wait a little bit. So I really like this card. This card was reprinted in Standard a couple years ago and did really, really well by it. And I really, really enjoy this. My number 7 is Dragon Master Outcast. So Dragon Master Outcast is 1 red. It's a creature type human shaman. It was originally printed in Worldwake. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 6 or more lands, you create a 5/5 red dragon creature token with flying. So while you can cast it on turn 1, it doesn't really do anything. Where I saw this in Standard, because I wasn't around for Worldwake, is Standard, Battle for Zendikar Standard was defined by these mid-range, almost control decks, where you had Esper Dragons, you had Dark Jeskai, Moist Teamer, whatever else was going on at the time. And so it wasn't really a fast format at all. And so you would tend to wait until like turn 5, turn 6, you would slam this, and you would wait until your opponent had basically exhausted themselves in the first couple turns, or you would just sort of protect the queen, where this would be your play because it costs 1. And so you have the lands to protect this thing, and then you would wait for it to just start spitting out dragons and close out the game. And so I like the way that this sort of flies in the face of what red normally wants to do. I like the way that it closes out games, that it tends to see, mid-range control play. I really like this card.
Yeah.
I like that it prompts you to do something.
Exactly. I love it as a control finisher because in control, you want to have a protect the queen strategy, but sometimes you have to tap out for your queen and then you can't protect it. This you play on turn 6, you have 5 mana to protect your Dragon Master Outcast. And that's pretty much how those Jeskai and Dark Jeskai rounds would go, is they would go 6th land, Dragon Master Outcast, go.
Yeah, or you'd spend your time killing this, and then you'd lose to like a Soulfire Grandmaster, I think it was, or the Monastery Mentors. And so, do you deal with this thing, or do you hope for a better target?
Yeah, this is one of those cards that's great for sort of evaluation. It's a great cube card because a lot of people don't know, well, should I take it early? Should I take it late? Do I think it's on a table? Because people they don't value it that much. But when this card is like, it's bad until it's great. Yeah. It's like, this is nothing. I don't like it. Oh my God, this is going to take over the game.
But also
I
that
can't
6
stop
lands number, I mean, we see Scoot Swarm all the time now. Scoot Mob was the first one. This was in the same vein as that.
It's true. Yeah, and I would love to see more cards of this vein. Like, for example, a 1-drop that made little 1/1 hasters if you had 3 lands or something.
Sure.
Like, you can play around with this concept a lot. It feels weird they only kind of did it this one.
Because you can tape delay your aggressive. It needs you to, you need to have more lands in play in order for this to start actually functioning.
Right, which I thought was really sweet. That said, my number 7 here is definitely a cube all-star. This was one of the cards that when I built the cube, it was there. When I left my cube, it was there. It was there the whole time. Everyone kind of, they chaff at it a little bit, but they also understand how stupidly good this card is. And considering that Kaldheim has an average of 32 words per card, Frazzled Editor would be the monster of Standard right now.
Sure.
Frazzled Editor is a common found in Unhinged. Yeah. It is a creature.
I get it.
All right. Creature human bureaucrat and has protection from wordy. Something is wordy if it has 4 or more lines of rules text. And let me tell you, this thing was just a monster in cube. This is your first pick for your red deck, and you ride it to victory. People can
Of note, reminder text does not count as rules text.
It's true.
We had to use
I just noticed the flavor text here of the P.
Yeah,
is mightier.
The pen is mightier, except for that they misspelled it.
Good.
It's good. This was also Unhinged when they were making a bunch of butt jokes and
remember there was the asses and all that stuff,
which we love, but the culture is sort of
a bit much. We've sort of moved. We've grown up a little bit.
You would think, but
in terms of printing them on actual Magic
we
cards,
rode WAP pretty hard for a while there.
I enjoyed that. I don't care. Y'all.
We know you have 5 kids.
Hey.
That was a great 3.5 weeks.
Let's move on here to number 6, which I share with someone of all the mono red humans in all the world. We decided that our number 6 was this one. Okay, Aaron, tell us about it.
So I was around when this card was originally printed, but this card came back into my focus when I was thinking about getting into Modern because, Modern at the time was very expensive, at least for me, and still can be for many people. But, I didn't really know where to start. And so I was really looking for budget options to kind of at least try the format to see if I really wanted to invest in it. And I'll never forget Travis Wu at the time was really well known for playing Living End. And so he had wrote a budget article for Channel Fireball where if you wanted to play Living End, he offered some more affordable alternatives for some of the cards. And at the time, Fulminator Mage was quite expensive. It was between $30 and $60, depending on the day. Now it's down to, I think, less than $10, which is beautiful. Thank you, Wizards. But, when you can't afford Fulminator Mage, you make do with what you got. And at the time, what I had was our number 6, which is Avalanche Riders.
Avalanche Riders was a fantastic card that showed back up in Time Spiral Time Shifted, which is where I got to play the most of my time with it. But it's also an invitational winner for Darwin. Thank you, Darwin Castle. Yeah, for
originally printed in my favorite set, Urza's Legacy.
That's right. For red and 3 generic mana, it's a 2/2. I guess Time Shifted, originally uncommon, human nomad. It has haste and echo of a red and 3 generic mana at the beginning of your upkeep. If this came under your control since the beginning of your last upkeep, you sacrifice it unless you pay its echo cost. And when it enters the battlefield, you destroy target land. Yes.
So 2/2 haste means you got in for that damage and you got the effect. Usually you would just let it die. You would do the 2 damage, or you'd chump block with it a lot back in Urza's Legacy. And then it would because it was going to die anyway.
Right.
And then you can, in Living End, you can bring it back because it kills itself by accident. This was my number 10.
Nice.
Very excellent card. And in certain situations, you want this, especially with Planeswalkers running around, you want this over Fulminator Mage because you can put pressure on those Planeswalkers.
Yeah, so you would use this in Living End. Fulminator Mage is typically meant to, kind of clear the way for your Living End, essentially. And it also just comes back. So even if you're not really getting rid of anything important, you're still going to Living End it back and then whoop, just really kind of close the door and leave them naked and afraid.
Goodness gracious. This card was 2006. This is the closest we've come to Stone Rain type effects, certainly on a good card that destroys a land in about 14 or 15 years.
This came very close to winning Worlds in 1999, by the way, alongside such hits as Fire Slinger, Jackal Pup, and Mog Fanatic.
Get it.
In a mono-red land destruction deck that ran 4 Pillage, 4 Stone Rain, and 4 Avalanche Riders. Look at God.
Yeah. Ruben, what's your number 6?
2005 was a really good year for mono red. We had back-to-back Pro Tour winners from Scandinavia that won with red deck wins and a Tarka red kind of things. And one of those decks was Joel Larson, who won Pro Tour Magic Origins in Vancouver with a bunch of humans in his deck. I'm sure we'll talk later about Monastery Swiftspear. Also, Lightning Berserker was in this deck, which was close to making my list. And then, of course, there's my number 6, which is Abbot of Carroll Keep.
You mean 2015?
Sorry, 2015, not 2006. 2006 was what Evan just said about Avalanche Riders.
Okay.
I meant 2015 was a really good year for mono red. What I meant to say.
Agreed.
Abbot of Carroll Keep is a colorless and a red for a 2/1 human monk with prowess. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this creature gets +1/+1 till end of turn. When Abbot of Carroll Keep enters the battlefield, exile the top card of your library. Until end of turn, you may play that card. This card is also in the cube, and for very good reason.
This is one of the first times Wizards actually put the exile a card, now you can play it stuff on red cards, and that is crazy exciting because red has very little card advantage, certainly very little card draw as we talked about, and Abbot was right there when you needed it, and it was awesome.
And then you would run into these lines where it would enter the battlefield, it would exile the top card. It was a spell. They can go ahead and cast that spell, which triggers the prowess. And so games would just end very quickly thanks to this card.
This card was great because it was a 2-drop and you could play it on turn 2, and a 2/1 prowess on turn 2 is fine. But turn 3 in these red decks, when you had so many 1-drops and so many lands, you could go, before you played your land, play the Abbot. If it's a land, you hit your land for the turn. That's basically drawing a card. Or if you didn't and you hit a Lightning Berserker or a Fiery Impulse or whatever, you could play that too. This card was amazing.
Yeah, I wish this card would come back. I could probably do Historic, I suppose, in an arena would be nice. Like, this card is dope.
Sometimes I've seen it in modern burn decks, and obviously prowess has been a thing in modern for quite some time. So it crops up here and there. I mean, I love prowess as a mechanic. I think it's a really intelligent way to do burn, as opposed to just like stop hitting yourself, stop hitting yourself. Like I think it's really cool the cards that people play and the sequencing of it. And so I'm sure it'll crop up at some point.
Yeah, it's weird how prowess was like this evergreen. This is going to be here. Get used to it, and then they're like, nah.
Then they got rid of it again.
I'm like, okay.
You would think, but when they slapped it on that one Stormwing entity, like that put prowess on the map again. Like so, it just takes one card.
It's like temperate rainforest as opposed to evergreen. It's like they bring it back every once in a while.
Nice. Let's move on here to number 5. Now, again, out of all the cards, out of all the mono red humans in all the world,
this one we share.
I shared, wow, number 6
Great
with
line.
Aaron, number 5 with Ruben. That's amazing. Tell us about a number 5, Ruben.
Speaking of prowess, I mean, the mono red prowess deck is kind of, this card's super important to it. Once again, just in all of these, Ramunap red decks, for example, during standard, Wyatt Darby won a Pro Tour with this card primarily, well, not primarily, but Pro Tour Dominaria, with this alongside of cards like Earthshaker Kenra and Hazaret and Carrie, of course. But 4 copies of Soulscar Mage. I mean,
Soulscar Mage is just the hot business right now, and it's just the number one thing you can play in red and historic, and it's great. It's 1 red mana for a 1/2 rare human wizard, and it does have prowess, and if a source you control would deal non-combat damage to a creature an opponent controls, put that many -1/-1 counters on that creature instead. So your shock shrinks them forever, or obviously just kills them if you can, or it messes with combat, because when you shocked them and gave them 2/2 or 2/1/-1 counters, this turned into a 2/3, which again flips the combat math sideways, and this card has been fantastic ever since it saw print.
And this was important because this wasn't a format with gods, and so your basic burn spells was not going to stop a Hazaret or a Ronus or whatever. You needed something that would actually have a lasting way to rack up that damage and rack up those counters, and so it was very, very relevant.
This was my number 1 -1/-1 counters card.
Nice.
And for good reason. I mean, this card is spectacularly good. It shrunk Karizev with a shock, which was a huge deal. This card's great.
Or even just other prowess creatures, because prowess will make it temporarily bigger, but when the prowess wears off, that thing's
Bye-bye.
out.
Dies at the end of the turn.
Yeah, fan-freaking-tastic. Let's move on to Aaron's number 5. What you got?
So my number 5 just came at the right time. So Faithless Looting had been banned in Modern.
Yep.
And we didn't really know what to do. Dredge players, Phoenix was dead. Like the Faithless Looting ban just killed any sort of Phoenix deck. So those guys were out. And Dredge players were like, what are we going to do? Like, we're probably going to be fine, but like, are we going to do Tome Scour? Like, what are we working with here? And then Throne of Eldraine came out. And then this innocuous common came out, and people started testing with it, and they were like, wait a minute, we think we're onto something here. This is where we want to be. And Modern Dredge has survived and is still putting up results, as the meme in our Discord likes to say. And it is all thanks to my number 5, which is Merchant of the Veil. So Merchant of the Veil is 2 colorless and a red, but it also has the adventure sides on it. So the left side is Haggle, which is 1 red. It's an instant adventure. You may discard a card, and if you do, draw a card. Yes.
Perfect.
And then the right half, which is very rare. I don't think I've cast this, but I've never actually activated it. The right side says 2 and a red. You can discard a card and draw a card once you have the creature, which is 2 power and 3 toughness. But what we're really looking at is the left side here. So being able to do this at instant speed is really cool. This does a really good impression of like Insolent Neonate. So you discard your dredger and you immediately draw. And so this is really what gets you back in the game. And so this was a really, really big game changer for us. And sometimes just having a 2/3 body is fine. If the game's running long, you'll take it. But really just doing a decent, being a decent substitute for Faithless Looting is really what we're talking about here.
Absolutely. And a great limited card too. I would run basically every copy of this that I could get. 2 3s for 2 were great in this format. Being able to rummage is always important, and you could do it multiple times in a turn. The ability, and Haggle's spectacular. I mean, 1 mana for that ability at instant speed, and then the merchant doesn't go to your graveyard. So if they have graveyard hate, you still have the adventure.
It's true.
Beaten to death with a merchant.
Right.
Don't make me.
Stuff.
All right. So our number 4, as in ours, and me and Ruben's number 4 and number 3 are higher. Aaron's number 4 is higher.
Also higher.
Aaron's number 3 exists?
I do have a 3, yeah.
Let's hear about it.
So my number 3 is one of the mages, part of the mages cycle that we've seen expand throughout the years. And I can't think of many mages that have continued to see constructive plays. So in my opinion, this is one of the few exceptions, and is a very powerful card. So it goes for about $15, even though it's been recently reprinted, and just does what it needs to do. It sees play in the mono red prison decks as another Blood Moon type effect, and also sees play in green red. There was a weird green red mid-range deck that popped up in Modern all of a sudden that was not quite Ponza and not quite Jund. It was just like red green mid-range, and so this was also a staple of that too. My number 3 is Magus of the Moon, or Magus of the Moon. So Magus of the Moon's simple, 2 colorless and a red. It's a creature type human wizard, 2 power, 2 toughness, and it just does what Blood Moon does. So non-basic lands or mountains. So if your goal is to lock people out of their lands, if your goal is to punish greedy people, you run your 4 copies of actual factual Blood Moon, and then you also run Magus of the Moon, so that your likelihood of getting that effect is going to happen. And it also is that effect on a body, which can be very powerful if your goal is to be aggressive and to close out the games. And so this does what it needs you to do, and sees play in Legacy, has seen play in Vintage at times, sees play in Modern certainly, and so that's good enough to be my number 3.
Wow. Yeah, this card's a monster. And this is also so if I play the Urborg first,
right,
and then the Magus, the Magus and then the Urborg.
Timing, layers.
It gets rough.
I love Magus of the Moon. It is currently the most expensive Magus, more than Magus of the Coffers, which is about $6. And it is the second most played Magus in Elder Dragon Highlander, right behind Magus of the Wheel, another red Magus. This card is near and dear to my heart because back in 2013, I made the top 8 of the SCG Cincinnati Legacy Tournament. And in the semifinals, I set the record for the fastest game won because I played a Ancient Tomb, I exiled a Simian Spirit Guide, and I played a turn 1 Magus of the Moon against Matt Hoey, who was playing Shardless Bug, who had no basic lands in his deck, and he immediately conceded.
That's fantastic. This is one of those cards that, they've only printed it twice. What are we doing?
I know.
Why have we not reprinted this card? It's ridiculous. It's
and in Iconic Masters, which is not the greatest place to have a reprint.
It's not very iconic.
Oh, yes. Iconic Masters that didn't have Lightning Bolt and didn't have Sarah Angel. I remember that set. But Magus of the Moon, in and of itself, is a sweet creature. I mean, and it's just a creature. Awesome. It's a lot easier to get rid of than the enchantment. And problem times.
One of my favorite uses, one of my favorite things that Magus of the Moon ever did to a format was in Standard, Lorwyn Time Spiral Standard. Fairies decks would often run copies of Shock in their sideboard.
Oh, yeah.
With no red mana in their deck.
I remember this. Oh, my God. That was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to shut down the Mutavaults.
Just to shut down Magus of the Moon.
Well, to shut down against their Mutavaults and stuff, but still. Card was crazy powerful then and has not stopped being powerful, as it turns out. Let's move on here to our number 2. Ruben, what's number 2?
So my number 2 surprised me that it was so high on my list. You know that I love it when cards win Pro Tours. This card's won a Pro Tour. I love it when cards are in the cube. This card's in the cube. This is the number 5 ranked EDH rec human. Red human. I didn't realize that Zealous Conscripts was that popular.
It is.
Oh, yeah.
Zealous Conscripts is 4 colorless and a red for a 3/3 human warrior with haste. When Zealous Conscripts enters the battlefield, gain control of target permanent until end of turn. Untap that permanent, it gains haste until end of turn. This is, of course, 1 in the hands of Tom Martell, the Aristocrats deck. A huge thing that you can do with this card, stealing Planeswalkers that are about to ultimate.
Yes.
I've ultimated a lot of Tamio the Moon Sages out of my red decks. A lot of, various Garricks and Elspeths and things. Not to mention just taking blockers, right? Not to mention just taking or untapping lands, stuff like that.
Gaining control of permanents, not creatures, permanents temporarily. I would love to see more of that in Red's Color Pie. They did this kind of one time. I remember one time Aaron Forsyth was like, what do you guys think about Zealous Conscripts? And we're like, it's awesome. We love the gameplay. And they never do it again. What happened? I love this card.
The only thing better than stealing it is sacrificing it to the Falcon Wrath Aristocrat. This was something the Aristocrat decks would wheel out. I think it might have been, I don't think it was part of it might have been a sideboard card or maybe a 1 in the main, but you steal it.
1 or 2 in the main, I think, for Tom Martell.
I mean, every Magic player, you need a a bucket list, and on that bucket list, one of the items needs to be stealing a planeswalker and popping its ultimate with zealous conscripts. It's just so good.
This card was also important in the birthing pod chains because you could untap your own birthing pod to jump from 4 to 6.
Yep.
Because you could play the zealous conscript, untap your birthing pod, sacrifice the conscripts, go get your Titan.
And still goes for about $1.50, $2. So, you know.
It's still a fine casual card. I just want to see more stuff like this existing in Red. I thought it was fun. Gameplay was sweet. And again, this was my number 8 because I loved it. Aaron, what's number 2?
So my number 2 is a card that Ruben touched on a little bit earlier in the show. And as much as I might shake my fist at this card, and as much as I have died to this card, I mean, I got to respect the hustle. You have to respect that this card, you know, was a powerhouse in Standard and continues to be a powerhouse in Modern and Legacy. Doesn't see play in Vintage, thank God. My number 2 is Monastery Swiftspear. So Monastery Swiftspear is 1 red, was originally printed in Khans of Tarkir, and still goes for like $2. Like let's respect that. Creature type human monk with 1 power and 2 toughness and haste, and prowess. So this is a staple of the prowess decks that have had a resurgence in Modern recently, and is a staple in the burn decks. Like just this is, you know, if it's not Goblin Guide, but it's either this or Goblin Guide that you want to be your ideal turn 1 play, and this card just gets so out of control so quickly.
I mean, I wouldn't have been surprised if this had been rare, first of all. The power level of this card is crazy, crazy high. It saw play from just day one. Day one, this card was a monster, and from the day it came out to the day it left Standard, it was a top-tier card and has stayed basically a top-tier card ever since.
There's a reason why Mono Red Prowess is called Mono Red Prowess, and it's Soulscar Mage and this card.
Yes.
It's a spells-based deck. This card kind of is what got Treasure Cruise banned in Legacy. Although Treasure Cruise itself was obviously a problem in a format with fetch lands, the blue-red spells deck was kind of why it took off and went to the moon.
Wow.
Once again, 2015, Martin Dang back-to-back with Yoel Larson. Both decks had 4 copies of Monastery Swiftspear. I mean, this card was a resurgence of why Red came back, and it was a wonderful, wonderful time.
Absolutely. So
for me personally, maybe not for Aaron.
No, I enjoy the card.
I mean, I like it. I mean, I did. I mean, I showed you, and I also played this in the when they tried to make the Runaway Steamkin deck happen.
Yeah.
Well,
the thing is that you are a reformed red mage, or you are refined. It's an acquired taste for you. Exactly. In 2015, when this thing was running roughshod,
I eat my miniature corn dogs
maybe
with
wasn't
chopsticks.
the best. But yeah, once again,
don't
Iconic Masters reprint.
Knife, all right, don't do that.
Iconic Masters reprint, not the best place to have this reprint.
All right, so for my number 2, how in the world? So, look, you know, you make lists, right? You understand we've been making lists a long time. It's 150th episode. High five. Thanks for all of your support. So we've been making these lists for a long time. And sometimes I go, you know what? I'm going to put this at number 2. I know it's going to be somebody else's number 1. It's okay that it's not a big deal. Because for me, it was my number 2, right? And so I'm like, how in the world is Ruben not gotten to Imperial Recruiter?
It's my number 3.
It's your number 3. It was above Zealot. It was
have this on here. This is
Swiftspear was my number 4. Recruiter's my number 3.
Wow.
It was below Zealous Conscripts.
Below Zealous Conscripts.
Imperial Recruiter. I mean, I'll do it. It's fine. Imperial Recruiter's a hell of a Magic card. It's seen tons and tons of play over the years. They finally reprinted it after it was $1 million in Portal 3 Kingdoms.
$122 still in Portal.
Yeah, it used to be like $300 or $350. It was ridiculous. Nowadays, it's come back to Earth to be about $20 or whatever. But Imperial Recruiter, for those who don't know, is a red and 2 generic mana for a 1/1 mythic creature, human advisor. When it enters the battlefield, you search your library for a creature card with power 2 or less. You reveal it, you put it into your hand, you shuffle your library, and you shame Ruben Bressler for not having this higher on his list.
The reason why it's below Zealous Conscripts is because Imperial Recruiter didn't win a Pro Tour, and Imperial Recruiter is ranked 6th of EDH Rec, not 5th.
Okay.
So while I love me an Imperial Recruiter, and I've cast a lot of Imperial Recruiters, and it goes and gets me my Magus of the Moon, and it goes and gets me my Painter Servant, and it goes and gets me my Jaya Ballard Task Mage.
Yeah, it does.
And for a brief period of time, it went and got me Stoneforge Mystics. And it's went and got me a lot of very interesting and fun things. It's got me a Kiki Jiki in the past, for example.
Fantastic.
And it inspired Imperial something else, the white one that goes and gets toughnesses.
Oh yeah.
It just barely didn't get my number 2.
I mean, okay.
I have a lot of love. I have a lot of love for Imperial Recruiter. I love Love this
I
card.
mean, clearly it's on your list right there at number 3.
Number 3.
All right, let's move on here to our number 1. Aaron, what is your number 1?
I shared mine with somebody. Who's the
Yeah, that'd be me.
Okay.
What y'all got?
All right. So, I do love that multi-format impact. And so, this is a card that, I remember when it first came out, and I don't recall it doing too much in standard. Maybe Ruben can.
It took a
correct
minute.
me.
There was a
Okay.
burn at the stake deck.
Okay.
That had like a couple of the standard rituals with it, but it was not very good in standard.
Okay. Well, it ended up eventually spawning its own archetype in Modern of the Mardu Pyromancer deck, thanks to another Pyromancer, Seasoned Pyromancer. And then, has continued to see play in Legacy as being a staple of the Delver decks. It also sees play in Vintage sometimes. You get some people that just want to be doing this in life. And who can really blame them? Our number 1 is Young Pyromancer, also known as Young Peasy.
Young Peasy. Hold
My
me
number
closer.
3. Yeah.
Pyromancer. Young Pyromancer is a colorless and red for 2 unhuman shaman, originally from Magic 2014, reprinted a couple of times, including signature spellbook Chandra, which if you haven't seen that copy, go take a look at that copy.
Yeah.
Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, make a 1/1 red elemental creature token. You remember that tournament that I made the top 8 of in SCG Cincinnati? Well, see what happened was I made the finals against Eric Rill.
He never brings it up, so we don't know.
And Eric Rill was playing a 4-color Young Pyromancer deck, and I played a moon, and he was just like, all right, here's a Young Pyromancer and several bolts, still kill you. And I was like, oh, that's annoying. But,
oh no, Dad, was the lights Friday night, were they too bright? Could you not see them all? Was the marching band loud? Okay.
But blue-red aggro, Rug Delver, Young Stoneblade was popular for a minute, and then of course in Legacy, and now we have Mardu Midrange and Mardu Pyromancers, and Blue Moon even plays this card quite a bit.
I mean, look at how cool this list was. We all had sames with each other in every combination. Me and Ruben, me and Aaron, Ruben and I, fan-freaking-tastic.
Very cool.
Which means we move on to my number 1, which is Ruben's number 8, and Aaron's number 4 by elimination. Okay. And I kind of figure we're all going to be around the same-ish creatures on the top. It's fine. It's whatever. This one, to me, has more nostalgia for me. This one, to me, has sort of more staying power. I've played with this card way more than I ever played with Young Pyromancer. This card was there essentially from the OG, from when I got back into Magic to when essentially I got rid of my cube. I had plenty of physical versions of this, including the sweet Judge version that's out there. It's just a sort of a perennial, I guess is the word to put it. Like, this is one of the classic red creatures. This card's going to be good from now until whenever, unless they just literally power creep the hell out of it. You're not going to get better than Grim Lavamancer for your mono red human. It's 1 red mana for a 1/1 rare human wizard that says red, tap, exile 2 cards from your graveyard, Grim Lavamancer deals 2 damage to any target.
This may be an unpopular opinion, but I like that Torment art better than
I
the
do
new.
too.
I
just literally opened that window before any others.
Yeah. Why? I mean, I'm okay with the new art for the Judge card.
Terrible
and
or
Jumpstart.
anything.
But like the old lava that looks like a lava lamp. Like the old
flowing around.
Foil was so pretty.
Yeah.
Like this card is spectacular.
That foil is $86.
Yeah. Playing Modern. When I first started playing Modern, this was a card that would kind of come in and out of play depending on where the metagame was at. Typically, you want this in a format with lots of little creatures, lots of mana dorks. Things that you can sort of ping, and just sort of clear the way for. Great in the early game, great in the late game. It has that characteristic that a lot of broken cards have, or a lot of good cards have, and that you don't have to try to make it work. Like you don't have to run Faithless Looting with this. Like you just play Magic. Like you just, you play your fetch lands, you play your, whatever, and eventually you have graveyard fodder. And then just if you have nothing else to do, this is something for you to do. It was a great way we talked about red having card advantage, and Burn didn't necessarily want to draw cards, but like if you happen to be drawing dead, well, just play whatever crap you have and then fuel this baby. And so
because it gave red reach.
It gave red reach. It gave red repeatable damage. It's great in every format with fetch lands in particular. Was very important back when no rug was big. During the Mental Misstep era, one of the main 1-drops you wanted was Grim Lavamancer because people were playing a ton of Noble Hierarchs, playing a ton of, obviously killing Deathrite Shaman is a huge deal as well. But this card has seen play in Twin. This card has seen play in Domain Zoo back in Standard when it was first printed in 2001 or whatever, 2002. Naya Burn, I mean, just everything.
Yeah.
And that was our top 10 mono red humans. You'll see them on the screen right now for your review. Take a look at my list, Aaron's list, Ruben's top 10, and we want to hear from you about what card we did not talk about, and we'll select our favorite to win a $50 gift certificate to coolstuffinc.com. But before we go, I want to thank my co-host. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ruben.
Thank you. And a quick episode for mono red humans.
As it should be.
As it should be.
All right. As we go to our final slide, I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsors, CardHoarder.com and AlterSleeves.com. I'm getting better at it. My co-hosts, Aaron Campbell and Ruben Bressler, you guys for watching and listening. I hope you support us at Patreon.com/MagicMikes. Follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at Twitch.tv at MagicMikes, on Twitter at MagicMikesCast, our Magic Mike subreddit, and like the Magic Mikes page on Facebook. Or just join us here next week. Same time, same place for another episode of Magic Mikes. Good night, everybody.